What would you do if you witnessed a crime unfolding before your eyes? For most, the answer is uncertain. But when Donald Trump found himself in this very predicament, his response was nothing short of extraordinary. Picture this: a former president, a small-town robbery, and a split-second decision that would redefine his public image. As the situation escalated, Trump faced a moment that would test his character and challenge public perception. What happened next would leave the nation questioning everything they thought they knew about the man behind the headlines. Trump's actions that day revealed a side of him few had seen before, leaving everyone to wonder, who is this man really? The sun-baked streets of Millbrook lay quiet as Donald Trump's motorcade approached, the sleek black vehicles contrasting with the faded storefronts and weather-worn flags. The former president scanned the faces of curious onlookers, having come to reconnect with the forgotten people he often spoke about. As they passed Gus's General Store, a pillar of the community for generations, an unexpected scene disrupted the town's languid pace. Three men frantically loaded boxes into a beat-up van, while an elderly man stood in the doorway, his face etched with distress. His weathered hands gripped the frame, eyes darting between the men and the approaching motorcade, hope igniting as he recognized Trump. Inside the limousine, Trump's security team tensed. The lead agent's hand hovered near his earpiece, ready to call for support. Trump faced a pivotal choice: continue as planned or intervene in a situation outside his visit's scope. His mind raced through the consequences. Ignoring the scene would keep him safe and on schedule, but meant turning his back on those he came to support. Intervening could be dangerous, yet it offered a chance to demonstrate leadership. Trump's jaw set in determination. He ordered the motorcade to stop, sending a ripple of surprise through his security detail. The screeching brakes drew all eyes to the store. The men loading the van froze, faces a mixture of shock and fear. The store owner's expression shifted from despair to disbelief as Trump's car door began to open. The street fell silent as Trump emerged, his imposing figure casting a long shadow. His security team fanned out, scanning for threats. Trump's gaze swept over the scene: the startled thieves, the relieved store owner, and the curious onlookers. The air crackled with tension as everyone waited. His next actions would not only define this moment, but could potentially reshape his post-presidency legacy. As the tension crackled in the air, Donald Trump stood on the sun-baked pavement of Main Street, his gaze fixed on the unfolding scene. The weight of the moment pressed down on his shoulders, a reminder of responsibilities that clung to him even after leaving office. His security team hovered nearby, faces etched with concern. Trump's eyes locked with those of the elderly store owner, a silent exchange passing between them. He saw a lifetime of hard work reflected in the shopkeeper's weathered face, stirring something deep within him. The thieves, now aware of Trump's presence, stood frozen. Their eyes darted between the former president and the growing crowd, searching for an escape. The beat-up van, doors flung open, sat like a monument to their interrupted crime. A crowd gathered, phones raised high to capture the surreal moment. The air hummed with whispered conversations and camera clicks. The town held its breath, waiting to see how this would unfold. Trump took a deep breath, his next move hanging in the balance. His security team urged him to return to safety. "Sir, we can't guarantee your safety out here," an agent murmured. "We need to leave now." In that charged moment, Trump found himself at a crossroads. The path of safety beckoned, but the challenge of direct intervention pulled at him, testing his leadership. With a subtle shake of his head, Trump silenced his team's protests. He strode towards the thieves, his voice carrying across the street. "Gentlemen," he called out, firm but not unkind, "I think it's time we had a little chat about what's going on here." As he approached, Trump's demeanor shifted. The bombastic showman was gone, replaced by a measured approach. "I've seen tough times," he said, addressing everyone. "I've seen what desperation can drive people to do, but this isn't the answer." The town watched, captivated by Trump attempting to defuse the situation with words rather than force. His gaze swept over the scene, taking in the startled thieves, the hopeful store owner, and the attentive crowd. "I came here to talk about forgotten America," Trump continued, his voice gaining strength. "But I never expected to see it laid bare like this. This is about a community in pain, about people who feel they've run out of options." One thief, a young man with hollow cheeks, dared to meet Trump's gaze. A spark of understanding passed between them. "Let's talk about solutions," Trump said, surprising everyone. "Not just for today, but for tomorrow. Because if we can't find a way to lift each other up, to create opportunities right here in towns like Millbrook, then what are we doing? As he spoke, the crowd's shock gave way to cautious hope. Here was a figure from their televisions, speaking not as a distant authority, but as someone invested in their struggles. The crowd held its breath as Donald Trump stood before the would-be thieves, his imposing figure casting a long shadow on the sun-baked pavement of Main Street. As he began to speak, his words cut through the tension like a beacon of light, carrying a weight that belied their carefully measured tone. "Gentlemen," Trump began, his voice low but clear, "I think we all know this isn't how things are supposed to go." The thieves shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between Trump and the growing crowd of onlookers. Fight or flight instincts warred visibly on their faces as they realized the gravity of their situation. Trump's security team formed a protective circle around him, while the crowd leaned in, straining to hear every word. Children were lifted onto shoulders, and those at the back pressed forward, desperate not to miss a moment of this unexpected confrontation. As Trump continued to speak, his voice began to rise, filled with a mix of authority and unexpected compassion that caught everyone off guard. "I've seen tough times," he said, his tone softening slightly. "I've seen what desperation can drive good people to do. But this," he gestured towards the half-empty store and the van filled with stolen goods, "this isn't the answer." The former president's words resonated beyond the thieves, sweeping over the gathered crowd. He took in the weathered faces and worried eyes of the townspeople, addressing the heart of their struggles. "This is about a community in pain, about people who feel they've run out of options." As he spoke, something began to shift in the atmosphere. The initial fear and anger that had gripped the crowd started to give way to something more complex. People exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement, others looking thoughtful. Even the thieves seemed affected, their defiant postures slowly crumbling under the weight of Trump's words. "We can't ignore the problems that led to this moment," Trump said, his voice now ringing out clear and strong. "But we also can't let those problems tear us apart. We're better than that. This town is better than that." The former president's unexpected approach struck a chord that resonated with both law and humanity. He spoke of the importance of community, of looking out for one's neighbors, and of finding legal ways to address the underlying issues that had brought them to this point. As Trump's impromptu speech drew to a close, the thieves stood with their heads bowed, shame evident in their slumped shoulders. The crowd, too, had undergone a transformation. The initial shock and fear had given way to a sense of cautious hope. Here was a man they had seen countless times on television, speaking to them not as a distant authority, but as someone genuinely invested in their struggles. In that moment, Trump was addressing more than petty criminals. He was speaking to the heart of a divided nation. His words had somehow managed to bridge the chasm between law and desperation, offering a path forward that acknowledged the pain of those who felt forgotten while still upholding the principles of justice and community. As the echoes of Trump's words faded, a hush fell over the crowd. The air on Main Street seemed to quiver with possibility. Trump's eyes softened as he gazed at the would-be thieves, his demeanor shifting subtly but unmistakably. "Tell me your story," Trump said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. The request caught everyone off guard. The thieves, who had been staring at their feet, looked up in surprise. The crowd held its breath, unsure of what would unfold next. One of the men, his hands trembling slightly, stepped forward. We didn't mean any harm," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "We've got families to feed, and the factory shut down last month. We've been looking for work, but—" His voice trailed off, choked with emotion. Trump listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. As the man spoke, the others chimed in, each adding pieces to a mosaic of hardship. Tales of medical bills, foreclosed homes, and children going to bed hungry painted a stark picture of desperation. The crowd's mood began to shift. Whispers of sympathy rippled through the onlookers. Even some of those who had been calling for arrests moments earlier now wore expressions of uncertainty. Trump's face, usually a mask of confidence, now revealed a complexity of emotions. There was sadness there and something else, a flicker of recognition perhaps. He nodded slowly, processing the stories he'd heard. Then, in a move that surprised everyone, Trump turned to the elderly store owner. "Sir," he said, his tone respectful, "I'd like to hear your thoughts on this." The old man's weathered face contorted with conflicting emotions. His eyes darted between Trump, the thieves, and the stolen goods. For a long moment he said nothing, the weight of the decision visible in the slump of his shoulders. Finally he spoke, his voice cracking with age and emotion. I've known some of these fellas since they were kids, he said slowly. Never thought I'd see the day when. He paused, swallowing hard. But times are tough. Real tough. And I can't say I blame him for being desperate. Trump nodded, a look of determination settling over his features. He turned back to face the crowd, his presence commanding attention once more. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice carrying across the hushed street, what we have here is an opportunity. An opportunity to show the world what America is really about. The crowd leaned in, hanging on every word. Trump continued, his voice gaining strength. We're not just about law and order. We're about second chances. We're about lifting each other up when times get tough. He turned to the thieves who stood frozen, uncertainty etched on their faces. You men made a mistake today, Trump said firmly. But I believe in redemption, so here's what we're going to do. What happened next left the town speechless. Instead of calling for arrests, Trump proposed an unconventional solution. He suggested that the men work off their debt by helping to renovate and expand Gus's general store. In return, they would receive fair wages and job training. This isn't just about making amends, Trump explained, his eyes sweeping over the crowd. It's about investing in our community. It's about creating opportunities where there were none. The elderly store owner's eyes widened in disbelief. The thieves, who moments ago had been facing the prospect of jail, now looked at Trump with a mixture of gratitude and awe. But Trump wasn't finished. He turned to the crowd, his voice rising with passion. And for the rest of us, we have a responsibility too, to support our neighbors, to create jobs, to build a community where desperation doesn't drive good people to make bad choices. As Trump's words sank in, something remarkable happened. The tension that had gripped the street began to dissolve. In its place, a new energy emerged, one of cautious hope and determination. People in the crowd began to nod, first hesitantly, then with growing conviction. A few even stepped forward, offering their own ideas for community improvement and job creation. The would-be thieves, overcome with emotion, approached the store owner. With trembling voices, they offered heartfelt apologies and promises to make things right. The old man, tears glistening in his eyes, clasped their hands in forgiveness. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across Millbrook's Main Street, the town buzzed with an energy it hadn't felt in years. The extraordinary events at Gus's general store had ignited a spark of hope that was quickly spreading through the community. Neighbors who had barely exchanged more than a nod in recent months now stood on street corners, animatedly discussing the day's events. The initial shock of Trump's unexpected intervention had given way to a surge of community spirit. Outside the local diner, a group of women planned a potluck to welcome the reformed thieves back into the fold. At the barber shop, men debated the merits of second chances, their voices rising and falling with the snip of scissors. But not everyone in Millbrook was convinced. Harold Jenkins, the retired sheriff, voiced their concerns. What kind of message are we sending to our kids? That crime pays if you're lucky enough to get caught by a celebrity? Inside the town hall, local leaders had convened an emergency meeting. Mayor Sarah Thompson listened to the heated debate, her brow furrowed as council members clashed over Trump's approach. Some praised his compassion, while others argued for stricter adherence to the law. As night fell, a caravan of news vans rolled into Millbrook, their satellite dishes stretching towards the sky. Journalists from across the country had descended on the small town, eager to report on this unexpected turn of events. Local residents found themselves thrust into the spotlight, their every word scrutinized for deeper meaning. In the face of this sudden national attention, something remarkable began to happen. The town, which had been teetering on the edge of division, began to rally around both the store owner and the reformed thieves. Gus found himself surrounded by well-wishers and helpers, while the three young men worked tirelessly to make amends, their efforts met with encouragement and support. As the clock struck 9, an impromptu town meeting was called. The community center quickly filled to capacity, with those unable to fit inside pressing their faces against the windows. At the center of it all stood Donald Trump, his presence both commanding and unexpectedly comforting to many in the room. The former president spoke of unity, of the power of forgiveness, and of the strength that comes from facing adversity together. His words, stripped of their usual bombast, resonated deeply with the assembled crowd. Like a rising tide that lifts all boats, Trump declared, our compassion will elevate this community. Together, we will turn this moment of crisis into a testament of our shared humanity. As Trump concluded his speech, a hush fell over the gathering. In that moment of silence, something profound seemed to shift in the collective consciousness of Millbrook. The town, which had been struggling with economic hardship and a growing sense of despair, suddenly found itself at the center of a narrative of hope and redemption. The story of Millbrook's transformation had only just begun, but already the seeds of change had taken root in the hearts of its citizens. As darkness settled over Millbrook, the quiet streets belied the storm of attention brewing beyond its borders. The day's extraordinary events had set in motion a chain reaction that would soon engulf the nation. In living rooms across America, television screens flickered to life with breaking news, their glow illuminating faces etched with curiosity and disbelief. The story of Donald Trump's unexpected intervention in a small-town crime spread rapidly. News anchors recounted the tale of the former president's surprising act of compassion, their voices tinged with urgency. Footage of Trump standing amidst the crowd on Main Street, transforming a moment of potential violence into one of hope, played on loop. The nation watched, transfixed, as the familiar figure of Trump took on a new dimension. As the night deepened, political analysts debated in television studios, their heated discussions mirroring the confusion and fascination gripping the country. Some praised Trump's actions as a display of leadership, while others questioned the legality and ethics of his intervention. Social media platforms erupted with a cacophony of voices, hashtags related to the Millbrook incident trending worldwide. Video clips of Trump's speech, captured on smartphone cameras, went viral, fueling fierce online debates. For Trump supporters, the events in Millbrook were a vindication of their faith. They saw the compassionate leader they had always believed him to be. Yet even among his base, confusion lingered. This display of empathy seemed at odds with the brash image Trump had long cultivated. His critics found themselves in equally unfamiliar territory, some grudgingly acknowledging the positive impact of his actions, others searching for hidden motives. As dawn broke, a new wave of voices entered the national conversation. The families of the would-be thieves came forward, their stories adding depth to the unfolding drama. A woman with tired eyes and calloused hands spoke of her husband's desperation after losing his job at the factory. These personal accounts humanized the incident, forcing the nation to confront the harsh realities faced by many small towns across America. The ripples of Millbrook's transformation spread, touching communities facing similar challenges. Town leaders from across the country reached out, seeking guidance on fostering unity and resilience. As the sun climbed higher, a new conversation began to take shape. Beyond the political implications and controversies surrounding Trump himself, people started to discuss deeper questions of leadership, compassion, and the true meaning of community. In Washington, D.C., politicians on both sides of the aisle watched the unfolding events with a mix of wariness and curiosity. Trump's actions in Millbrook had the potential to reshape the political landscape, challenging long-held assumptions about his character and leadership style. Policy advisors huddled in quiet offices, pondering how this moment might influence future legislation on criminal